The arcade fever of the 70s opened up new opportunities for companies who were already active in the coin-op business. Sega, Namco, Taito, Konami, and Midway embraced it and made their name in this new field. A short, golden age would soon follow for developers, arcade owners, and arcade goers. At the start of the 80s, worldwide icons and new trends followed each other in rapid succession as the foundations were further developed for many game genres. The combat sports, or fighting genre, was represented early on by Sega's 1976 boxing game Heavyweight Champ. In the mid-80s, Nintendo and Technos set up their first steps in this combat sports genre with Punch-Out and Karate Champ. Konami broke away from the sports setting and developed ER Kung Fu, inspired by the Bruce Lee movies. This 1985 game pitted the player against a gang of martial arts masters with their own distinct look and moves. Its home computer sequel added a two-player mode in which players could choose from a number of characters, including the female Chinese warrior Lan Lan. The arcade boom also led to success for companies like Irem and Capcom, who would contribute to the fighting genre. A man who had worked for both companies was Takashi Nishiyama. In his days at Irem, he worked on the beat-em-up Kung Fu Master, after which he got headhunted by Capcom. The up-and-coming Osaka-based company Capcom had quickly gained a reputation for their shoot-em-up and action titles. Nishiyama would continue his passion for martial arts-themed projects, resulting in the '87 release, Street Fighter. This title would center around an international fighting tournament, in which young martial artists Ryu and Ken would participate. Together with a planner, Nishiyama gave it a movie-like quality, drawing inspiration from Enter the Dragon. They spent a lot of time on developing the characters' personalities beyond what was present inside the game. Meanwhile, the arcade industry had become a highly competitive market. The large number of new arcade machines that entered the scene all had to fight for their own spot inside the arcades, malls, or cafeteria, competing not only with new, but also with proven and still successful machines from previous years. The game designers therefore had to be inventive to catch the eye of players and arcade owners. The Street Fighter team added pressure-sensitive controls in order to make it stand out. This feature ultimately caused more pain than enjoyment, and was replaced by a 6-button setup. Despite its initial problems and rushed development schedule, Street Fighter became a decent hit and would advance the genre with additionals like the special command attacks. By the mid-80s, the trend had emerged of streamlining development and manufacturing with standardized arcade hardware that could be used on multiple games. Companies were often designing their own in-house systems, often with similar components. Like Sega, Capcom chose the 16-bit Motorola 68000 CPU, the Zilog 80 co-CPU, and a Yamaha FM audio chip as a foundation for their arcade hardware called the CP system. This was a 3-board setup, with board A including the main hardware components, similar to a game console. The B stored the game data, thus acted like a game cartridge, while the C board could hold future extensions. The innovative shooter Forgotten Worlds would be Capcom's first title developed for the CP system. Capcom had 3 development teams at the time. The 2 ex-Konami employees, Fujiwara and Okamoto, managed the first and third development teams respectively, while the second team was headed by Nishiyama, who directed Street Fighter. Forgotten Worlds would fall under Okamoto's team. He asked 2 young game designers to further develop his ideas. They added concepts like the roll switch to have full control over the character's aim. Being the first game developed for the CP system came with its challenges. The long development process and the large amount of memory the game required contributed to its financial failure. Nevertheless, it was the start of an important partnership between the 2 young game designers, Akira Nishitani, a game planner for Song, and the illustrator Akira Yasuda. The arcade market had been in a steady decline since the mid-80s. Genres like shoot-em-ups were losing popularity in the West and were generally less profitable for arcade owners. It was time for Capcom to focus on a different genre. Fighting games and beat-em-ups were starting to gain traction and had a much higher coin flow due to their multiplayer aspect. Thus the desire for a successor to Street Fighter was building inside Capcom. The main forces behind the original game had left the company to work for competitor SNK, so a new team had to take over. Young talent from Capcom's third development team, including Akira Yasuda, started developing plans for Street Fighter II, featuring massive character sprites. However, the project was quickly put aside, as the company faced a massive memory chip shortage in 1988. Yasuda teamed up with Nishitani to develop a more straightforward game plan instead, the beat-em-up Final Fight. As Capcom could only get hold of a fraction of their ordered ROM chips, they had to work with a smaller ROM capacity than Forgotten Worlds. Learning from their experience on this shoot-'em-up, the two game designers established an efficient style of labor and made sure to get maximum results out of the limited ROM space. For example, by shortening the width of the character's walking animation, they were able to save memory. Nishitani's grasp on game design really came to the fore during this project. While his planner colleagues started out as graphic designers or programmers, he was hired specifically for this role. Nishitani didn't take any game mechanics for granted, but worked hard with the programmers to improve the gameplay. Final Fight was ready for release after 6 months of production, and would fit within the designated memory capacity. The beat-em-up was a smash hit for the company, and helped to put Capcom in a more financially stable position. Quickly after this massive success, Yasuda and Nishitani revisited the ideas for Street Fighter II. The price of ROM chips had been dropping to the point the two could start on the ambitious Street Fighter II game plan by the end of '89. Despite Nishitani's designs for new gameplay ideas, management requested a straightforward game in line with the original. The core structure was therefore set early on. A roster of 8 playable characters and 4 bosses participating in a worldwide fighting tournament. It was within these confines that they had to find ways to set the next big step for the genre. Like with Final Fight, designing the characters was the first priority. It was decided early on to have Ken and Ryu return for this sequel. Keeping the character sketches from the first Street Fighter II concept in mind, Nishitani and Yasuda started to make lists of nationalities and fighting styles they wanted to have represented in the game. Their philosophy was to play with stereotypes, but make them over the top in a way that would be talked about and greatly contrasting. Under the direction of Yasuda, a small group of lead character designers would start to flesh out his rough sketches and notes over the span of several months. The conceptualized ninja was assigned the Spanish nationality, which gave its designer a healthy challenge. Character designs from Fist of the North Star set him on the right path to sketch the bullfighting